Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and joining me once again, my co-host, Grapeviney. Good evening, Grapeviney. How are you?
I'm pretty good, all things considered, Andy, given that we've just been bundled out of the finals unceremoniously and we're about to lose one of our key forward, young guns.
Well, we'll talk about that and a lot more later in the program, but yeah, I do agree with you. I'm over it now. If I sound like I'm broadcasting in a bathroom because of an echo, I am away at the moment. And I think it's just the hotel room doesn't have the best acoustics, so we'll just have to bear with that. If you'd like to join us on the program tonight to discuss any of the topics that we talk about, you can give us a call on 0390163666, or you can Skype us at Demonland31. If you're listening to the show live, you can join us in our chat room where you can ask questions or post comments by heading over to demonland.com/podcast. If you're listening to this podcast a bit later on via SoundCloud on Demonland or via iTunes on an Android podcasting app, be sure to subscribe to the show to receive updates when a new show drops. Don't forget to leave us a favourable review to help more people find us. You can follow us on the socials, Facebook at facebook.com/Demonland31, Twitter at Demonland, Instagram at Demonland31, or on YouTube, just search for Demonland Podcast. Or you can join us on Demonland.com all year round and chat with other Dees fans, but let's get that all out of the way. You know what, I think I've moved on. I was bitterly disappointed. Obviously by half time the game was over. I think you were the same at half time. You'd gotten over it.
Yeah, look, I was pretty relaxed, all things considered. It was really disappointing, but we got steamrolled from the beginning. We were fumbly, we were slipping and sliding everywhere, coughed the ball up over and over again, and it cost us almost every time. And before you could blink, we were, 4 goals down. And then, look, early in the second, they put it to bed. Basically, the entire team looked absolutely dumbstruck. And the game was over. So, yeah.
I can't remember what they scored in the first quarter. I think it was maybe 3 goals, 8. But they could have well been 8 goals, 3 to our 3 points. We were just smashed. So the game could have been over. The game could have been over at quarter time, really.
It looked like it was over at quarter time. I think we had a few chances in the first quarter. We didn't take any of them. As you said, they coughed a few up, but got enough on the board to put a reasonable gap in place, and then finished it off in the early part of the second quarter.
You mentioned we were slipping and sliding and fumbling. I noticed that being at the ground, a lot of the times we were kicking. Yeah, the ball would fly over where we were kicking it to, and they would just mop it up every time. But the whole slipping and sliding thing, a lot of people accusing perhaps these people on Demonland accusing the ground staff of perhaps overwatering the wicket, and perhaps that's why we were slipping and sliding. But they weren't doing it, so I don't know. What do you make anything out of that, or we just sour grapes?
Look, I read that too, and that could be true. But I think we've had the slipping issue at other grounds and quite frequently throughout the year. It happens too often, more often than you'd like. Clayton Oliver slips over once a week, and it's not uncommon to see other players do it. And I just wonder whether it's obviously the type of footwear that they're wearing. I think the days of the screw-ins versus the moulded stops are over, but it wasn't confined to this one game. I think it's a bit of a broader issue.
I'll also add, being at the ground, it was sweltering, the heat, and I know they have to play in it too. It's also probably the start of the warmer weather, so it's not like you can say, well, they're just used to it, and maybe they are used to the hotter weather. But at the end of the game, I remember looking at my watch, and it's got the weather on it, and it was 27.7, but it felt like 30 plus degrees, sort of low 30s. So I can't imagine that would have helped us out. But then again, they have to play in those conditions as well, and it didn't seem to bother them.
Yeah, look, I think we'd been on a really good run, playing excellent footy 4 weeks in a row. It's a taxing style of football that we play. The 2 finals particularly were very physical, and we looked absolutely spent very early on against West Coast. You just sort of wonder whether, the emotional roller coaster that the players had been on, for a number of weeks, whether it all just sort of came to a head and collapsed, basically, and they ran out of gas. I think we acknowledged when we were previewing the match that it could well be a bridge too far to go back over there and get another win, and we would have needed absolutely everything to go our way. So, while disappointing, I don't think it was too surprising. But
going forward, we're going to have to play 3 or 4 finals. We can't, we've got to be able to win those games.
No, that's true. But you've got guys in the team who haven't done many pre-seasons.
Yep.
Spargo, Fritsch. Fritsch wasn't there on the weekend.
You mentioned Fritsch. Let's talk about that. That was announced after our program last week. Were you surprised by that non-inclusion? Well, that had no bearing on the result in the end. You can't say that, but
no, absolutely not. Look, I would have preferred. Others had suggested it. Smith in Fritsch up to a wing and Tyson the one to go. It didn't happen. It didn't make one jot of a difference. Although Dom Tyson had a really poor game among players that a lot of players that had poor games. But no, I don't think that particular selection move had a bearing on the outcome.
But it was, I thought it was a strange move. Felt for Bailey.
Yep.
He hadn't been starring in the couple of games leading up to it, but he's been a very good contributor all year. He delivers the ball beautifully. Well,
the unfortunate thing for him was he ended up competing for a spot that isn't his really natural position. Yeah. So he went down back after Lever, and he ended up losing his spot in the back line, which isn't really where he'd ideally be playing. So look, he'll get over the sort of pain of that selection move. He played very well the following day in the Casey game, so he looks far too good for that level. So he'll be back in the ones next year.
Lazy in the chat room says that we looked nervous before the game. Being at the ground, I couldn't tell that, so that's obviously something on TV. Did you notice that at all, that they look nervous? Or
no,
is that something?
No, I couldn't read anything into it.
Yeah. Look, I must say, I had a very nice weekend over there. Besides the latter part of it, went over there on the Friday. Met up with some mates who were also travelling over there. We watched the footy on the Friday night. We were shocked by the result. Sort of not quite laughing at Richmond, but saying how they didn't fire a shot, and then that was repeated the next day. So. Yeah, had a nice weekend. The lead up to the game was good, and then I think it all ended a few minutes after the siren sounded for the start of the game. But that crowd over there, I mentioned it before the game. They boo everything, and they do boo everything. Could you hear that over the? Could you hear their crowd over the?
Oh,
the
look,
telly?
it was really loud.
Yeah.
I didn't think the booing was as sustained as it was last time round.
Well, they didn't need to boo because...
Well, that's true. I guess there weren't too many opportunities
No.
to boo. They they had the ball the entire time. So,
And we had a lot of luck not go our way, balls not bouncing for us, and it seemed to just bounce for them, right?
and it seemed to last all day, didn't it? I mean, it was the third quarter when Hannon got the bad bounce running into an open goal, and then 30 seconds later, Darling, I think it was, got that remarkable leg break that
there were a few
that was virtually sort of out of bounds,
Yeah.
And then went through. So, and that just, as you say, it seemed to happen all day. Smothers, which we affected, ended up in their hands.
Yep.
So nothing went right.
No.
Absolutely nothing went right.
Including that goal that then the score review where it hit the back of his heel or something. Nothing went right.
No. And you have those days. And I suspect that Goodwin and the football department won't spend too much time reviewing it or raking over it. I think they'll just move on to next year, bigger and better, onwards and upwards.
Yeah, and look, I don't think there's really much point in dissecting the game any further. There weren't very many stars on the day. There were a few guys that didn't lower their colours, but there were some guys that I wouldn't even know they were. I wouldn't even know if some of them had played the game, to tell you the truth.
The damning stat was no tackles for, I think, a good half dozen players, and then another half dozen only had one tackle. So
and then there was we've smashed the contested possession stat all year and got smashed there. So look, I think we won at every game bar one this year, and that's quite disappointing. And look, hopefully they can learn from the mistakes. I saw Robbo, not our Robbo, the media Robbo, saying, this game will scar us. And I don't think so. How can that be any more scarring than, say, round 23 last year? They probably said the same thing, that would be scarred by that, and look what happened. I think that's just headline grabbing sort of stuff. I mean, it's a game like Richmond had, it's more likely to scar them than us. So
I don't buy into that, and I think they'll be stung by it. There'd be a number of players that would be embarrassed about what happened, but equally, I think they're going to be buoyed by the experience of the two earlier finals. I mean, nothing is as addictive as winning like that. Playing on the big stage,
90,000 2 weeks
in front of 90,000 people, and rolling your opposition. And I think they'll, once you experience that, you want it again. So I think that those two wins will make them just as hungry as the loss will make them, pretty angry.
And I think it shows just how important it is to finish top two, or top four at least, hoping you get a Victorian team if you're in the bottom part of the top four. It's just so important going into finals, having that home final. You don't want to have to travel, go to Perth. It's a hard trip, and even if had we pulled off a win to come back and back it up in a grand final, so you want to go through your own home ground, and that's hopefully they learn those lessons going into next year. I think that's probably it for the Perth game. There's nothing really much to talk about, except that as a result of that game, it was our last game, congratulations to Clayton Oliver for taking out his second Demonland Player of the Year, 2 years running. So he'll be getting a trophy in the mail, like Angus Brayshaw received a third place medal from the AFL quite quickly. Did you watch the whole Brownlow medal count?
Yeah, I did. It gets more and more unbearable each year. I don't know why they need to pad it out with the silly stuff on the side. Richo and Adam Cooney doing that interview, and kids interviewing players. Count the votes, get in and get out. And it's lasted 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's just way too long. I did watch, and I was a bit sort of disappointed at about the round 15, 16 mark. I didn't think that we were getting due recognition for what was a pretty good season, but Max and Gus came home with a flurry, Gus in particular. So that was good to see.
Were you shocked about Gus?
Not really. I mean, we were shocked that he hadn't been invited.
I said that when I posted a thread when it was announced who was invited. I thought that T-Mac and Brayshaw were stiff, and people were saying, well, it's because they missed a lot of footy. Well,
Brayshaw only missed the first three. It was another few weeks before he went into the middle, which is when he really hit his straps. But the footy media has been saying it's a bit of a surprise, although they also all acknowledge that Brayshaw is, a gun. So I don't think it is that surprising in a midfielder's medal. But you put Clarry, Gus, and Max together, and I think 54 or 55 votes, which is a pretty good return. And throw Jack Viney in if he'd had a full season, and you've got our engine room polling really well.
Yeah, well, look,
not surprisingly,
if you gave votes in the first two finals, you'd see Viney being high up there as well. So he would have got a couple of probably 2-3 votes from umpires. Clarry, do you think the helmet is greater than the red hair in terms of polling votes? Because Clarry seemed to not get what I thought, a couple of games where I thought he'd poll. There was the game against Geelong, which we ended up losing.
40 touches.
20 contested. I'm not sure if he kicked a goal as well. But yeah, no votes. So that seemed to happen to a few players on the nights. Anyway, that's how it goes. That happens every year.
Yeah, same happened with Max. There was one time he got 200 hit-outs to advantage, kicked a couple of goals against St Kilda, I think, and didn't get any love. So I think increasingly people... the Brownlow will always be a prestigious medal, but I think people are increasingly devaluing the umpire's sort of judgment on the whole thing. We know that it's become a midfielder's medal. Backmen rarely get votes. And then you've got things like the Coaches Award and the Players Award, which have got their own level of sort of credibility, I suppose, because it's coming from your peers in one instance and from the people that matter most. So, the umpires sort of come in third behind that, don't they?
Yeah, I remember someone once telling me they had spoken to an umpire. I don't think he umpires anymore, and he said they're concentrating so much on all the rules that change and the interpretations that they sometimes get to the end of the game and they're really not sure who had the best game. So
and then they might end up relying on statistics. Angus had a lot of the ball on the weekend, but was pretty fumbly and had a bit of a mare of a game. As we know, stats don't always tell the story. I agree with D. Oldfart, who's just commented in the chat room that, perhaps surprised that Gus outvoted Clarry by so much. And I've heard that sentiment expressed elsewhere, that Clarry probably came in unders.
Yeah, I just even on what you were saying before about Gus getting a lot of ball, there was a bit of criticism, I know, sort of towards the end of the year when he had that great period that his usage of the ball wasn't great. He was getting a lot of it, but wasn't hitting a lot of targets and all that. So you must wonder that the umpires, whether they see someone getting a lot of the ball, but then maybe because they're concentrating on other things in the game, they're not necessarily noticing the effectiveness or that. But that's not taking anything away from Gus. I think he's had a fantastic year, and it was like having a new player back in the team this year, considering the amount of time he spent out. So,
and I don't think his disposal has been problematic at all. He had a shocker in the prelim. There's no doubt about that. But
who didn't? As we've said.
But no, other than that, he's not a bad user of the ball.
Yeah. Also announced at the Brownlow medal was that Clarry's going to be having post-season surgery on both shoulders, and I haven't read too much about it. One thing I did read was that he has to have one and then wait a couple of weeks and then have the other. So they're saying he'll be back to full contact in January. Do you expect him to miss any games? Obviously, maybe pre-season, but...
There was, I can't remember who the poster was in that thread, was a physio and said that either they or someone they know had undergone, and that January might be a bit optimistic.
Okay.
So, you want him back as soon as possible.
Yeah, particularly because we'll be getting a more difficult draw, I imagine, next year, given where we've finished. So, wish Clarry all the best, and hopefully he can be back on the park sooner rather than later.
And you just wonder how injured he's been playing and for how long.
Yeah.
He seems to have done pretty well regardless.
Yeah. Did you get to watch much of the Casey Grand Final?
Yep, I did. I was going to go, but after the loss, I was a bit too deflated, so I watched it on the telly.
Yeah, I came back. I had to come back that morning from Perth. I had to go straight, almost from the airport, to my daughter's birthday party, and then I sort of came back. I came back home, and I think I put the moz on them because I came back and we were 10 points up or 4 points up or something, and from then on I think they kicked 2 goals or 3 goals, and we all know what are the results, so could have been my fault.
Well, it was Casey's fault because they could have had a much larger lead earlier in the game, didn't capitalise on their opportunities and dominance, and it ended up coming back to bite them on the bum.
I saw a couple of highlights. I saw a beautiful tackle that Fritsch did on the boundary line, but that's about it. Haven't seen much else from the game. Anything you can take out of it? I imagine, well, given a couple of the delistings, some of the players aren't going to be around next year. So
yeah, well, Bug's gone and Pedersen's gone. So they both played their last games. Bernie Vince, of course, played his last game. Jay Kennedy-Harris started really well, but drifted out of the game. Jeffy didn't have more than a couple of cameos and was largely missing. So, no, it wasn't a particularly great game. Declan Kelty did pretty well down back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with he and Harry Petty going into next year.
Yeah, I agree. Coaches, before we go into sort of trade and delistings and stuff, Coach of the Year was announced just the other day, the AFL Coaches Association Award, and it's no surprise that Simon Goodwin was voted third best. So well done to the coach. I guess the 2 grand finalists, it's understandable why they're the top 2. But yeah, good on Goody. Do they take into account the finals? That's what I was going to ask. If you knew that, or is that home and away? You'd have to think finals.
No, I think they do take into account the finals. And look, Collingwood were expected to finish down the bottom, and even a lot of people tip West Coast to tumble as well this year. So probably fair cop on the award. Goody will get his time, I'm sure.
Yes. So, the listings announced yesterday, I believe. We've got, so far, 5 delistings. Now, I wasn't sure whether it seemed like Cam Pedersen retired. What might have been one of those, you're going to be delisted. Would you like to retire type of deals? Seems like he's retired. And then we've had Tommy Bug delisted. Now, it's interesting that they haven't sort of... Oh, well, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. You would think they would have put his name up to a few teams. I'm sure they're all talking to each other. Teams are talking to each other. I'm sure his name might have been put up there as part of a trade for something. Given that they've delisted him, there seems like there probably wasn't any takers for that, because you would assume we would have thrown his name in for any potential trades we're considering.
Yep.
So given that he's just been delisted, that probably hasn't happened. Lucky Filipovic, he's one of the ruckmen, isn't he? He was a rookie player. Gone. Mitch King also, was he one of the...
Yes, the
rucks?
other. Yes,
so gone. And Pat McKenna, who had a lot of injuries. I don't think he played many games. He's gone too, and obviously Bernie Vince retired, and Harley Balich retired as well during the season. So we've got...
That's nine all up.
Yep. So today... Now, was this... I just saw it on Facebook, and I saw it on Demonland with Dean Kent. He has announced, is that an official thing, or is that media whispers that he would like to be traded?
No, it's official that he's looking for a move. Yep.
Yeah, it seems like he wants to obviously get more game time, get a better contract. I think he's just had the birth of a baby the other day, so he's looking to sort of shore up his own career and financial situation. So best of luck to him.
He's also been unlucky with injuries.
I had a St Kilda mate SMS me today saying, Dean Kent, is he any good? And I said, look, I like him. He's quick, he can kick goals. Except if he played more than 3 or 4 games a year, I'd be wrapped with him. But he's been very unlucky with injuries. They've torn the hamstring off the bone. He's done his AC joint a couple of times, broken collarbone.
He didn't help himself on a few occasions either. Just with regards to sort of proper standards and preparation, a bit lax at times, I believe.
Yeah, I'm sure that doesn't help, but he's looking to go elsewhere, so I'm sure we'll probably trade for probably the best we can hope for is a third rounder. So
at best.
Yep. So that's that. Now, we got rid of I'll just go back to the delistings. We got rid of 2 big guys. Now, it seems that we're going to get Braydon Preuss. Am I saying his name correctly? I should learn it before next year. Seems like we're going to get him. Are you happy with that decision? Where do you see him playing? Is he just going to be there as that backup if Max gets injured? Can you see a situation where we'd play 2 ruckmen?
You can if Jesse goes, and this is where the big mix and the big picture is still not clear to us. Depending on Jesse going, and there's talk of Stephen May coming in and Preuss, but you'd think that Preuss is leaving North because he's not getting enough. Not getting enough opportunity in the ones. Well, he's going to the club with the best ruckman in the league. So we did, I think when we discussed this last time, wonder what the motivation was. You've got to presume that he's been told that if he does come to Melbourne, he's going to play. And I haven't seen too much of him. By all accounts, he's a pretty promising player. And maybe he will be switching with Gawn and have a resting ruck forward, along with T-Mac and Wiedemann, on the presumption that Jesse's not there.
And we'll talk about Jesse in a moment. We're just on Preuss, though. The only thing I know about him is that I think, was it last year he had a decent year? It was either last year or 2016. One of the years he had a decent year, and the only reason I know, and when I say decent, I mean in the fact that if you were a fantasy football player, a a lot of people took him because he was quite a low-priced ruckman to have as your second ruckman. So if you needed to free up some salary cap room in your team to bring in some good midfielders, you would use Braydon Preuss because he was getting decent scores as your second ruckman. So that's all I know. I had him in my team, but I didn't really watch him except for seeing he got sort of okay fantasy football scores.
Yep.
So it seems like we're going to get him. That's what the media is saying, but we will see. Now the Jesse Hogan thing, is this still media beat? We're going to hear this if he stays, we're going to hear this every year until he's no longer playing for us. Is there more to it than this? Goody came out a few weeks ago, said no, he's staying, but we all know, things can change very quickly.
It seems this time that there's substance to it.
Where's it coming from? The Dees?
Well,
or from him?
It's coming from Jesse.
Yep.
His manager has apparently said that he's open to a trade to Fremantle.
You think he wants to go home or he wants out of the Dees?
Look, we just don't know.
Yeah.
I sort of posted on the forum today that, when he first burst onto the scene, remember that game against the Tigers on the Friday night, we all said back then that the only way we're going to keep him was to win games, become a good side, play finals,
we've done that.
Play for a premiership. And it just seems completely counterintuitive that after enduring the tail end of the miserable years and the slow but steady rise up the ladder, that he's about to jump ship to what's effectively another basket case of a club, just as we're coming good. So it doesn't make sense on the surface, but you've got to bear in mind that he had a really rough year last year. And his ambitions and priorities may well have changed with regards to those things. So I'll be sorry to see him go if he does end up going. He was one of the first pieces of the puzzle that was put in place as part of the rebuild.
Yeah.
We were saying at the time we're going to build a side around this guy, and that's what we've done. And it just feels a little bit surreal and a little bit sad that we might end up doing it all without Jesse.
Yeah, it does seem sad. I will say that I think towards the end of the year, I think we were playing better without him than we were with him a few of those games. That's not to say I'll just flick him off because we all know what a good footballer he is. But I think it gets to the point where if this is going to happen every 2 years, and then he becomes a free agent and leaves us, is it maybe if he's going to go that we get something for him now?
Well, you've got two different arguments in there. The free agency point is a really relevant one because I think he's an RFA next year.
Yep.
And so if he does go, then we're in a better bargaining position this year than next.
Yep.
But this argument that we've got to put up with the noise every year and we should just get rid of him because it's too much.
Oh, no, that I don't care about, yeah.
No, I mean, it's basically Fugazi, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's just background noise. And people hate the constant speculation. But if Jesse himself can drown it out, then it's not really an issue. I know some have sort of said that he might want to get out of the spotlight of sort of playing in Melbourne, but going back to WA...
It's a bigger spotlight, isn't it? I mean,
well,
locally.
It's a different type of spotlight. It's a two-town team where absolutely every last thing is put under the microscope. I think you can hide better in Melbourne than you can in Perth in terms of sort of media scrutiny. So... I don't know. We don't know what's motivating the decision. So
look, I just hope
we might never know.
I just hope we don't get screwed on a trade, and I want to get. Obviously, we've got to get a decent, very good pick, But I think we've got to get also perhaps a player out of it as well, and not just some fringe player. And I'll throw Harley Belling's name out there, someone that a name like that may not. We need something decent in return.
No, we're going to get something decent. If you think of what we paid for Lever, Jesse's got more exposed form.
What did we give? We gave
Lever,
two first round picks. Now we've
Yep.
got to get at least something like that in return.
Yep.
If not, and then a sweetener with it. Now there's the talk of Stephen May. If we're going to get Stephen May, I don't want. There's no trade of Jesse, a three-way trade. We give Jesse, they give something else, and then we get Stephen May. I'm not accepting that.
No.
We'll talk Stephen May now. Just forget whether he's part of the Jesse trade or not. Are you happy for him to come to the club? What do you think he brings to the club?
Look, I'm not over the moon about it. Look, he's a good player.
He's a defender, but where does he fit into our team? Having
I don't know.
back?
We've sort of got the same issue. The same issue down back that we sort of almost have up forward, in that there's an embarrassment of riches. Now, maybe not as rich in the back line as we are in the forward line. Frost, for all his good play over the past month or 6 weeks, still has a lot of problems. His athleticism and that dash is fantastic, but some of his defensive work has still got question marks on it. So I don't know whether Frost is a long-term best 22 player yet. I don't think that he is, as much as I do like those qualities.
What do you think if we had Lever in the team with, so Lever could sort of help with that third man up situation? Does that sort of help out, Frosty and McDonald?
Look, it may well. It may well. Yep.
All right, we've got a caller on the line. Good evening. How are you?
This is the Demonland Red and Blue Thunders live from Spencer Street. We're just handing out trade deals and players to Fremantle. Good evening, gentlemen. It's Super Mikado.
Super Mikado, good evening. I'm glad that you made it out safely out of Perth. Were you happy with your trip?
No, not really. But the only thing I will say in favour of the trip was that the decapitation was so quick and so clean that not only did we not have time to get into the game as fans, but the West Coast fans never got antsy enough, where I was sitting at least, to get into us. So it was quite a calm experience in the end. We kind of just got massacred and then just sat there and went, bugger me, for the rest of the first half.
Yeah, I had a few...
and then obviously...
I had a few Eagles supporters around me, even though I was in a predominantly Melbourne area, and they almost were apologetic for the way they killed us.
Well, the person sitting behind me was having a ripper of an argument with somebody. I could never actually work out who it was, because I could never hear the comments coming back the other way. But there was some, there was some stuff that can't be said on the air being yelled out from our side on that front. But like I said, I could never actually work out where it was coming back from. They were right. There was one person after the game, only one after the game, who kind of was walking the other way and did a bit of ho-ho-ho comedy, was given several Anglo-Saxon terms in response. But generally they were all right. Like I said, there was never even the slightest hint that we were going to win. So the tension level was never anywhere near what it would need to be for total mayhem in the stands. So in the end, it was a crap trip, but at the same time, it was actually a reasonably calm trip once the game started, until the West Coast theme song was playing at the end, and then I got the text message saying your plane has been delayed by an hour, which I thought was one of the most incredibly timed piss takes in history.
I did see
when all I wanted to do was go home immediately.
Yeah, I did see you mention that on Twitter. Yeah, I actually stayed the night overnight. I did want to get out of there as quickly as possible. It was actually unbearable because I was staying at the Crown, so it seemed that every West Coast Eagles supporter was congregating at Crown afterwards, so I couldn't even leave my room. And then to make matters worse, when I came out of the hotel in the morning, quite early morning, I had to walk. My room was the last room, so the furthest room away from the lifts. So as I made the walk of shame over to the lifts, I saw every newspaper sitting out of every room that wasn't very complimentary towards the Dees.
Yes, and nor should it have been either. It was certainly a flat as a tack performance. Hell of a time to save our worst performance for the year. But I think at the same time, look, I think it's pretty honest. If you said you'd offered us a prelim at the start of the year, we'll offer you a prelim, but you'll lose by 10 goals. We would have clutched it.
That was
with all our might, though. We only lost by 10 goals because the second half, Coast, there was a few times where it was like, with the loose ball, and they'd be like, no, you first, and basically just waved our players in to get the ball because they weren't going to risk hurting themselves or accidentally elbowing somebody in the head. So morally, it was probably more than a 11-goal loss or whatever it was, but in the future, when the historical record is opened, people will only see an 11-goal loss, fortunately.
Yeah, I got a lot of consolation from mates, non-Demon mates, with that exact thing, saying that if at the beginning of the year I would have offered you a preliminary final, you would have taken it, and you can't argue with that. And I agree with you that we were the scoreline in the end flattered us because should have lost by more, but
and look,
I'll take it.
I was
Andy, I can't hear Super Mikado.
Oh, you can't hear Super Mikado? All right, well, you'll have to listen to the replay because I can't. We're on one computer.
You can just let Grapeviney know that I had a miserable time and I'm never going back to the state of Western Australia.
Super Mikado wants me to tell you that he had a miserable time and he'll never go back to Western Australia.
I figured as much.
I'll just quickly ask you while I've got you on the phone before I let you go, considering that the other co-host can't hear you. In terms of the trades that we've got brewing at the moment, what are your thoughts on Jesse Hogan?
Well, firstly, can I just say I was late to call in because I was on the phone to a North Melbourne fan who was letting me know that apparently we're paying Braydon Preuss $600,000 a year, which is possibly the worst trade rumour I have ever heard in my life. I'm sure we'll get Braydon Preuss, and I don't know what he's actually going to do, but the idea that we would be paying some random ruckman who's played about 10 games $600,000 a year was the most laughable thing I've ever heard in my life. As for Hogan, I don't want him to go, but there's probably never going to be a better time to extract full price from Fremantle. Given that, if you let it roll another year, then West Coast will probably come into the mix as well, because Kennedy's not getting any younger.
Yeah.
So, look, I don't like it, but I would be accepting of it. I wouldn't be down at the club starting a picket line, Shane Woden trade style. Even though I was for that one as well, but I know there was a lot of anxiety. But, yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on Wiedemann next year to continue a hot streak that topped out at 2 games. It basically means McDonald will have to take the number one defender all the time. And then I guess that's where old mate $600,000 a year Preuss comes in as a forward. To play that ruck forward role. If Hogan doesn't go, I absolutely cannot understand where this bloke fits in to our team and why he would be joining us. So I guess he's definitely been given the Iggy that he's going to play, round 1 next year. Otherwise, I can't see why he would be coming unless we were paying him $600,000 to play in the reserve.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Look, it's disappointing if Hogan goes, but like I said, it'd almost at the same time be like, oh, thank Christ, let's just finish that storyline. I'm sick of discussing Willie, won't he? Like, either sign a contract for the next 10 years or go and let's move on.
You would think if he does leave, the club's going to have to make it clear that he's leaving because he wants to leave. Because if there's any inkling that the club has shoved him out the door, which I don't think they ever would, there'll be, if you thought there were some unhappy people about the Jack Watts trade, just wait till the Jesse Hogan one goes through.
I mean, it seems to me, reading between the lines, and you can never take journalists, until we know the full story, but it's almost a case of, we'll drive you there, we'll drive you to the meeting, and, you just tell us if you want to go, but, we'll be waiting outside, we'll be ready to sign the papers if you want to go. Like, it's one of those, it's your decision, but where, we would be very happy to facilitate this deal for you, but who knows, it might be complete bollocks, and he might come out tomorrow and sign a bloody lifetime contract for all I know, but like I said, it's like there's got to be something brewing to get Preuss in. Why would he join us if he's not going to play next year? And if he is going to play next year, how do you fit in McDonald, Hogan, Wiedemann and him?
No, you can't. Into
the same team. So, but who knows? Well, that's been brewing for a month. So if that conspiracy theory was true, does that mean that the Hogan thing's been brewing for a month as well, which I doubt, because surely we would have heard something about it before now. So watch this space, but yeah, look, I don't want him to go, but I would be accepting based on, depending on what we got. If they just got like pick 8 or something and that was it, I'd probably smash the joint down. Would certainly think you would want 2 first rounders at a minimum.
Considering with what we gave for Lever, you would think we've got to get...
Correct. Although you would argue coming the other way that Lever was an All-Australian, but... Hogan is coming into his prime, so it would be a fair deal. I mean, wouldn't have to be this year, both this year, one definitely this year, and whether that's going to be the on trade for Stephen Martin, Killer, Stephen May.
Well, what do you think about May? Where does he fit into the team?
I've been into May for about 3 years, so I would be very happy as long as he could just calm down from hitting people and getting rubbed out. I'm all for that. But you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. If effectively you turn Hogan into him and a draft pick, then it strengthens the back line, then it weakens the forward line. And are we happy with that in a case of this year we scored heaps, but we also were leaky at the back? Do you tighten up the back and take the hit at the front and hope that it balances out in the positive in the end? I'm all for May. And then I guess what's the other one? Dean Kent?
Yeah, well, Dean Kent was today, but we were saying with Grapeviney before that I can't imagine we'll get better than a third rounder.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be what gets flicked for Preuss.
Yeah.
In the end, that could be a straight move from one to the other. And look, I think Kent has a lot to offer, but it's probably where we've finally reached that situation where we have to start letting players go who are toss of the coin propositions. Like, he could be good. I don't kind of get the idea of him being a midfielder, but, good luck to St Kilda with that. But 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, we would have been like, no, we've got to keep this guy. We need people who have played, 40 games, 50 games. Whereas now we've growing the depth that allows us to shift players like that off and go and try and pick out the players we really want to improve the squad. So I wish him nothing but the best, and thank you very much for the goal against West Coast, but it certainly won't be something I'll be firebombing the Demon shop over.
All right. Well, I might have to leave it there, only because Grapeviney...
No, that's all good. I don't want to leave Grapeviney in the dark. I just want to say thank you very much, gents, and Grapeviney, you can hear this on the replay. Thank you very much for having me on this year. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed it. And, look, who knows what I'll be doing next year. I don't know how many of the games I'll actually be seeing, but I'm sure we will talk again at some point next season.
Well, you're always welcome to join us. You've got an open invitation if you do get to see a match, even if you don't. Wouldn't be the first time someone hasn't seen a match but has talked about it.
I might just ring in and just go wild on something that I've seen on the forums, even though I didn't actually see it in person.
Well, best of luck. I hope we do get to speak to you again. Thank you for your contribution.
Great. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, make sure you get on that tram. We can hear them.
I will do. It sounds like it's about to run me over.
All right, thanks, mate.
All right.
Cheers. That was Super Mikado. Hopefully it's not the last time we hear from him, given his new work situation. Sorry about that, Grapeviney. Just the setup I've got. Obviously, I'm talking to you through Skype on a browser, and that obviously doesn't feed through the sound. If I had my mixer at home, would be all sweet. He was basically just saying, we went through all the trades, pretty similar, on the same page as you in regards to all of those things. What he did mention was, he said he was speaking to a North Melbourne supporter who mentioned that he had heard, and take it with a grain of salt, that we were going to pay Braydon Preuss $600,000 a year. That seems a bit over the odds for me, particularly if he's playing a Casey.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. But look, the cap's gone up, so just the average wage has gone up. Yeah, I don't know. I can't.
Well, he was saying that
can't claim to be an expert on these things.
He was saying that Preuss probably has been told that he'll be playing in the ones next year.
Yep.
Which means maybe we did know about, meaning we as the club knew a bit about Jesse a bit earlier than we thought, but look, we don't know what's happening there. And watch this space. Grand final this week. Do you have a favourite? Well, I'll ask you two questions. Who do you think will win, and who do you want to win? Or none of the above?
I'm a bit ambivalent about the whole thing, to be honest. I usually, and I think I said this last week, I'm still in appreciation mode about where we got to this year. As much as I enjoyed the victories, I was still just happy to be back and on the big stage. One of the things that hurt so much during the miserable years was watching big games between other clubs, whether it was Hawthorn and Geelong on the Easter Monday, or Anzac Day, or the finals. And I just wanted Melbourne to be back on that stage. So now that we're back, I actually don't care too much about what happens to it now that we've sort of exited. So I'm a bit ambivalent about who wins on the weekend. I'm not sure. I've sort of underrated Collingwood all year, probably, and they looked really good the other night. So I'm not too sure. And I don't think I care either way.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you
hate
have a preference?
Both sets of supporters,
well,
but in different ways.
This was my thought. I'll first talk about, you were saying about the Dees being on the big stage, and yeah, I agree with you. I missed it. And you would have to think after the two finals that we had, we were able to bring in 90,000 both weeks. Both weeks we had a huge chunk of the crowd, more so in the first week than the second week, but you would say we had the majority on the second week as well. I think we've proved to the AFL we can bring numbers in if they give us big stage games. You would hope that we get 3 or 4 Friday nights in this coming next year, as well as having Queen's Birthday and the Anzac Eve game. So it looks like we will be on the big stage next year, and hopefully the AFL don't screw us with Friday nights and only give us 2 or something, or give us chuck us on a Thursday night, which I don't love, but yeah, I'd love to get a couple Friday night games, at least 3,
I'm sure we
maybe
will.
4.
Yep.
So we'll be on the big stage, and if we play an exciting brand of football. I said last week, a lot of my non-Melbourne supporting mates said they loved Melbourne in the finals. They thought we were, they hadn't seen a lot of us over the last few years, even when we'd started to come good, because we weren't on the big stage, and I think people sort of got a bit of a taste of the D. So let's hope big things to come in terms of this grand final. While I was at the Eagles game, I was like, I hope Collingwood thump you guys next week. And then I remembered that I was talking about Collingwood, and I've got to come back to Melbourne and actually spend a week seeing all the Collingwood people come out of the woodworks. I've got a friend who does not go to football anymore, but this week he's all of a sudden he's Collingwood's biggest fan. I can't stand that from any supporters, but the Collingwood as well. The supporters in the West, they were so arrogant. Even though I said some of them were nice about it, they're booing. I experienced it twice. But then again, I don't have to hear or see them. So if the Eagles win the grand final, it's over there. We won't hear from them. So the Fugazi is not going to reach my ears if they win. Whereas if Collingwood win, I just want to watch the grand final and see Eddie turn purple. That's what I want. So I'm hoping the Eagles will win. Having said that, I don't think they will. I thought Collingwood were very impressive on Friday night. For some reason, even though West Coast took us to the cleaners, I don't rate them. I don't think they can come and play in Melbourne. I think they're going to get rolled by Collingwood. Having said that, I don't think that Cox will have as good a game as he did last week. I think prior to that, I think the only games he's ever played well in is against Melbourne. I don't think he's going to have that game 2 weeks in a row. But I don't know. But I think they'll win. All right, grand final. Hopefully it's finished and we can start preparing for 2019. We've got the BNF coming up, but before we talk about that, I read today, but I just read the headline, but I haven't read anything about it. Caroline Wilson banned from a function, what Demons function. What's that all about?
This is not good, and it's hard to work out at the moment just who's responsible, but she's basically, there's an annual function, I don't know which one. She's been one of the speakers at it for going back a number of years. She was set to do it again this year. I think it's sort of now.
Is it a coterie function? Is it? It's not the best and fairest. No.
No. It's not the best and fairest. Sort of, it's one of the. I mean, the club puts on millions of those functions. So I don't know which one, but she got a call from Ryan Larkin, who's the club's media manager, telling her she was no longer required at the event.
So she was invited. She had been invited.
She had been invited, was uninvited.
Yep.
And the reason that Larkin gave to Wilson was that they weren't happy with her articles about Gary Pert's appointment and Bartlett's captain's call in making that appointment. So there's been, in terms of the thread on Demonland, there's sort of speculation as to whether it's a Gary Pert call or whether
that's what I was going to ask you.
Bartlett's nose is out of joint.
Yep.
But the general consensus in that thread, and I'd back it up with my own opinion, having worked in journalism and media relations for 25 plus years, is it's absolute amateur hour if they've reacted this way to what they see as a slight or a negative article. So you don't gain anything by making enemies of journalists. The usual people are going on in that thread that Wilson's got it in for us, but you speak to James Brayshaw, you speak to Eddie Maguire, you speak to Gil McLaughlin, they'll all say exactly the same thing. Caroline Wilson's got it in for me. And generally for journo, if everybody's saying that about the journo, then the journo's usually doing a pretty good job. That's usually an indicator that you're on the right track when everybody hates you.
All right, so Caroline Wilson not coming to a function. All right, BNF, any predictions? Seems like it could be a 2-horse race. However, there's a third horse that could be in the race, considering the end of the season that he had. But you'd think one of Maxi or Clayton's going to be taking it out. Other predictions, there's the best first-year player. For mine, I think it's Bailey will get that. What do you think? It's probably him or Spartacus. Sparky. What did you call him?
No, I think it'll be Bailey. Will edge out Spargo. Spargo, Bailey played more games, and arguably with his sort of versatility, achieved more or performed better. Or I think it'll go to Bailey.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think what other awards they have on the
Well,
night.
there's the most improved.
Ah, yes, Harmsy.
And I think it's got to be James Harms.
Yep.
And we should actually mention, going back to the Brownlow, Neville Jetta won the Jim Steins Community Participation Award.
Yeah, I was right.
And incredible. Yeah. They listed the organisations that he does work for. It's as long as your arm.
Yeah.
So thumbs up to Nev. He's won the equivalent club award the past few years.
And you would think he'll win it again.
He'll win it again this year, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But you'd think it's between Clarry and Max, and I think as we discussed a few weeks ago, or I certainly said that I'd love to see Clarry win it for the next 10 years, take out 10 BNFs, but it'd be good to see Max win one.
Yeah.
And I think Max would treasure it because he does love the club very much. So, there won't be any losers.
Yeah, so we had, I talked about Clarry taking out the Demonland Player of the Year award. He took it out. Max came second, and Brayshaw steamed ahead. He came third in ours. Harmsy also in the latter part of the year steamed up. He came fourth. Jesse was third for most of the year behind Clarry and Maxi, and he ended up in fifth. And then just out of that was Tom McDonald, which great effort considering he missed a lot of footy early. Then Jonesy, Salem, and Melksham, and Track and Viney.
Interesting about Jesse. I mean, he would have got 99% of those votes in the first 11 rounds, basically, because he had a few crappy weeks at the turn of the year before getting injured. So it just shows how good the form he was in.
Yeah. So I think that's it for us tonight. Unless you've got anything else you want to bring up.
No.
All right. Well,
no, I think we've sort of covered it. I think we'll reconvene after the draft, won't we? Or before the draft.
Well, we might. I haven't thought about it. We might maybe at the end of trade week, depending if we land some nice thing. What happens? We might come on then. We might do maybe a season wrap up, talk about some players and stuff. But I don't know, either that or the draft, and then we'll be back for our retaking our defence of the AFLX trophy. Or after the JLT, more likely.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Great Viney, and thank you, Super Mikado, for joining us. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks, I think. I'll be going to the BNF, so we'll post on Demonland any observations we make and who turns up and who doesn't, which will be interesting. All right, with that, get this theme music going again. All right, well, we don't have a game coming up this week, but I will say go Dees, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.